Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm here to look ahead to Newcastle United's trip to Nottingham Forest on Saturday night. But first of all, just a couple of bits of housekeeping. Thank you very much for everyone who's subscribed to my channel so far. I've just surpassed 200 subscribers on this channel. Really appreciate all the feedback, which has been overwhelmingly positive. Really appreciate all the support, and yeah, this has gone really well so far in the first few months of doing it. I hope to grow it even further, and I'm really pleased to be at this milestone so soon in the process. So thank you very much for subscribing. 204 subscribers. Please do continue. To anyone out there who's watching this having not subscribed, please do so if you like this sort of content, and there'll be much more to come over the next few weeks, months, and hopefully years as well. This is a game that's going to be really difficult for Newcastle given the circumstances with injuries. Eddie Howe's on his news conference this morning and basically said that what we all expected, there will be no Alexander Isak with the groin problem that he came up against Aston Villa a couple of weeks ago. Anthony Gordon left the game against Luton with in a moon boot with crutches. He's not going to make it, but both players should be back sooner than were initially feared, which isn't too bad. Joe Willock could be back at the end of February, which is really good news, I think. If you haven't checked out my video, and we'll get into Dan Burn a bit later, but if you haven't checked out my video on Joe Willock's impact on the team and how his absence alongside Joe Linton is kind of lent into the Dan Burn debate, please do check that video out. That's the latest video on the channel, and it really explains, in terms of my view, why Willock is so crucial to the team, why Dan Burn is really not doing anything too different to what he did last season. Personally, I think he should be brought out of the team, and as I say, we will get into this in a second, but really his responsibility on what he's bringing to the team hasn't changed. Everything's changed around him, and I think the responsibility lies elsewhere, namely with Eddie Howe. I will get into that in a few minutes. But more generally about the game, I think it's going to be a really tough one because there's no Isak and there's no Gordon. That kind of really slashes Newcastle's ability to be creative. And at the City Ground last year, in a really crucial sort of that run in spring where Newcastle really steamrolled to top four, and it was a win at the City Ground, which was absolutely pivotal to that. They went 1-0 down, then Alexander Isak pulled it back, and then there was a late penalty from Isak again to win the game. So Isak not being there is going to be absolutely a huge blow, as it always is. Callum Wilson should be fit to start, it sounds like. He's trained this week, so he'll come in and play up front, which obviously he didn't do last week from the start against Luton. I think that was an issue in terms of attacking goal threat. Newcastle looked good and had the game in the palm of their hands in that first half. It was a midfield and defensive issue that was a problem. Obviously, Burn got a lot of questions on him, but I think Newcastle will have to be a little bit more compact and a little bit more disciplined, more like they were against Aston Villa, because they were going to lack the creativity of Gordon and Isak. The movement of Wilson isn't the same. He's potent in the box, but Newcastle can't be as fluid in attack as they can be with Isak up front, and especially Gordon as well. So it's really going to be interesting to see how they function as a front three. It'll probably be Almiron, Wilson and Murphy up front. There's a lot of pace and a lot of direct running out wide, but there's not very much in terms of ingenuity in that attack. So that'll probably put a lot of pressure on the midfield, which probably puts a lot of pressure on Bruno to be the creative force from deep, because it'll probably be Miley and Sean Longstaff. So I do worry about the lack of creativity. Harvey Barnes, who is more of a sort of goal scoring and sort of system winger than Gordon is. Gordon's someone who can create something out of nothing. I don't think you can really say that about Harvey Barnes. Not sure he'll be fit enough to start by the sounds of what Eddie Howe's saying. I think he wants to ease him back in after so long out, which makes sense. So you would probably expect Murphy and Almiron out wide and Wilson up front. Left back, that's the big question. Obviously, yeah, please do go and check out that video on Dan Burn. Will Tino Livramento come in? There's a big chance that he will, because the fans, again, I didn't really touch on this in the video. I didn't agree with the fans chanting for Livramento just after the penalty, and there's a subtext to that which isn't very nice. Dan Burn is a player, as Eddie Howe said, who loves the club, loves Newcastle, understands everything that it means to play for this club. Just because he's having a difficult time doesn't mean he's a terrible player. And also, as well as that, he is a great guy. He doesn't deserve, on a human level, that sort of level of criticism and abuse. I think criticism's fine, but it got a little bit personal in my opinion, and Dan Burn is somebody who doesn't deserve that. But having said that, I think he probably should come out of the team. It was wrong that he probably survived beyond half time in the Luton game and was allowed to be on the pitch to make that to concede that penalty. And given that Nottingham Forest beat Newcastle on Boxing Day in the not too distant past, and Anthony Elanga was one of those players who got in behind Burn in the same way that Ogbene did last week, it feels more like Livramento should come in just to calm everybody down in the away end, not to give Nottingham Forest a sort of boost as well, because I think if they saw Dan Burn's name on it, it would give Elanga an opportunity to think, I can really get at him again and destroy him again. Whereas Livramento, having come on against Aston Villa and sort of calmed the process down as Villa was stepping up with their own substitute in Leon Bailey, and it really looked like they were going to come back from 3-0 down at one point in a 10-15 minute spell in the second half because of Bailey and him getting in against Burn. When Livramento came on and all right, it was not for Burn. Burn went into a back five. It shored them up, and because Livramento is quicker, he won't get as exposed when the space arises. And again, do go look back at that video for the explanation of exactly how teams expose that space on the break. But Livramento is much more solid defensively because of his pace at the moment. He's also much more of a threat going forward in attack as well. I think that it would make sense, given that Newcastle are lacking the creativity up front, as I said, to have him and give more of a balance to the team, because obviously Trippier on one side usually does all of the attacking from the full-back perspective. Burn goes into a back three, and Newcastle becomes solid from there. But I think they need to be solid from the midfield this time. I think they need Miley and Longstaff and Bruno to be as disciplined as they were against Aston Villa, and Newcastle to be able to sit in, take the sting out of the game as they did, but also press when they can and spring on the counter attack, which they'll be able to do with the pace of Murphy and the pace of Almiron as well. I said this on the True Faith podcast last night. Go and check that out if you haven't already. The reaction to the Luton game was natural, because it was such a crazy game and such a game that Newcastle, on paper, if you said that they wouldn't beat Luton this season over 2 games, that would be a huge disappointment. It obviously is. And after such a difficult run in December, you would feel that Newcastle needs to get back on track to win that game. And yes, that's true, but I don't think they would have come back in December. I think there is an improvement, and I think 4 points from the last 2 games, if you look over the whole, is a good return. And Newcastle are in a good position to win this game. Nottingham Forest aren't as good at home as they were last season, and they were obviously very, very good at home last season. Newcastle went there and won. It was a real statement. I think they can do that again this time in a different way. I think it'll be a more functional game. I think it'll be a more pragmatic game, a tighter game. Obviously, it was very tight in the end, but it was won on Newcastle's ingenuity and creativity through Isak. I think it'll be won on their tactical understanding and their discipline and their bravery in this game more than anything else. Harvey Barnes will have a say from the bench, I'm sure, if he doesn't start and come off. As for Nottingham Forest, will they be without Morgan Gibbs-White? That would be a huge boost for Newcastle, given that he was the player that instigated that defeat on Boxing Day, really, from picking that space apart behind Bruno and really making Newcastle pay. And then he unlocked Elanga, and then Newcastle couldn't answer that with Chris Wood, who is also out as well. So there are some injury boosts for Newcastle in the terms of Nottingham Forest, but some blows as well, given that there's no Isak and there's no Anthony Gordon. Newcastle will win the game. I think it'll be tight. But I do think that the situation is a lot better than perhaps it feels like after the draw with Luton last week. I also expect them to have looked at the situation with their openness in midfield and their lack of press, which is, as I say, explained in that video. Please do go and check it out this week going into the game at the City Ground. Thank you once again for subscribing. Over 200 subs now. Please do like, share and subscribe if this is what you like. Also, I've got 9 copies of my book Black and White Knight to sell as well. So get in touch on Twitter or in the comments with anything if you want a copy of that. And yeah, what do you think? I really appreciated the feedback on that video. I really appreciated the debate in the comments. So yeah, get in the comments, give me your thoughts, and we'll have a little interaction. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.